And now that decks have been cleared for China's Xi Jinping to continue as president even after his second term, the question is, was it necessary and why now? Was there some urgency to it? Let's begin with the first question. Was it necessary? Well, in China, the Communist Party is all-powerful. It is the sole political party allowed by the Constitution. The party is headed by the General Secretary. The General Secretary is more powerful than the President. The General Secretary has no term limits. Xi Jinping is already General Secretary, and the norm is they retire at 68 years of age. He is 64, which means Xi will have to retire in 2022 when he turns 68. Clearly, he wants to continue, and the extension of the president's term is a signal that he is sending about his intentions. If he is to continue as General Secretary even after 68, he has to build the momentum now. He cannot afford to wait till 2022. Now, China watchers in India believe Xi has powerful opponents within the party, some led by Jiang Zemin, a former party General Secretary and President of China. It was important for Xi to eliminate the threat from Jiang Zemin's backers at the earliest. This is where packaging is important. Indian diplomats who study China say Xi heart sold his purge of adversaries as a crackdown on corruption.
明确中国共产党的领导是中国特色社会主义最本质的特征。中国共产党领导呢，也是中国特色社会主义制度最大的优势。
Now, some of Jiang Zemin's backers were swept away in Xi Jinping's celebrated purge of the corrupt in the party and government. Two of them, Xu Kaihu and Guo Boxiong, were vice chairman in the Central Military Commission, or the CMC. They were also reportedly corrupt, taking bribes to facilitate various people. The crackdown on corruption was popular and has cemented Xi Jinping's reputation of Mr. Clean.
你在刚才提问中所 设想和推测和延伸的那些情况呢，我觉得是不存在的，不存在的。习近平总书记在19届中央政治局常委第一次从中外媒体见面会上。
Now, the state-run media has helped package his image. Concentration of power is portrayed as necessary to defeat vested interests. Now, the vested interests are seen as opposed to economic reform. Strong leadership is necessary to carry forward anti-poverty programs as well. Only strong leadership can overcome resistance from local governments. So the pitch is very clear. Increased centralization can enhance economic stability, reduce risk and uncertainty, and improve economic efficiency. The media has carefully avoided any mention of a successor to Xi Jinping. Successor should have been paraded before the TV cameras during last October's session of the Communist Party's National Congress, but there was none. Then again, the nomination of Wang Qishan, Xi's school buddy and longtime confidant who headed the crackdown on corruption, suggests he will take over as vice president when the current incumbent Li Keqiang retires. His presence is a reminder and a warning to potential adversaries that Xi's crackdown on corruption will continue for as long as required. Right, joining me live from Beijing is Atul Aneja, who writes for the Hindu newspaper from Beijing. Good evening, Atul. Now, we've heard of this pet phrase of Chinese leaders, military with Chinese characteristics, democracy with Chinese characteristics. But after Xi Jinping's, the road has been paved way for his third and indefinite term as president. Are we looking at China with Xi Jinping characteristics from here onwards?
Well, certainly a new era of Xi Jinping has started. And we could sense that since the 19th Party Congress itself, when Xi Jinping thought was incorporated, a decision was taken to incorporate Xi Jinping thought in the constitution of the country. So, and also even earlier when Xi Jinping was declared as the core leader in 2016. Given the fact that he is the General Secretary of their party, the chairman of the Central Military Commission, the core leader, and now with his thought being enshrined, that's something which had happened only with Mao and Deng Xiaoping. suggests that the Xi Jinping era really started with the 19th Party Congress in its true sense. And it has declared two strategic goals. One is, of course, what you mentioned about the lifting of the remaining 70 million people out of poverty by 2020. But then there are these other centenary goals. By 2020, again, China becoming a socialist, a moderately prosperous socialist society. And thereafter, era till 2035, then this is consolidated, leading to 2050, which is the second centenary goal, which is of making China into an advanced socialist country. So, frankly, from Xi's perspective, or at least from those who are close to him, the era has been was cast in stone with the 19th Party Congress. And what we saw yesterday was the incremental advance towards that. Because as you know, the president's post is really a ceremonial post. The real power comes from the other two institutions, which I mentioned, General Secretary of the CPC and the CMC chairman, and being the core leader. So frankly, that's in place now. And it's a big gamble which has been taken. You had mentioned in your report itself about certain compulsions which are taking place, but then there are certain imponderables now that the decision has been taken of becoming such a powerful leader. So we'll see. It's a high risk gamble, and Xi Jinping is a big risk taker. We have seen it in his first term itself, the way he went after the anti-corruption campaign. So lots of balls in the air right now. But the direction, the strategic direction to the Xi Jinping era has come since the 19th Party Congress and amplified yesterday.
Indeed. And very quickly, Atul, I want you to reflect on the statistics which was flashed across television screens yesterday. 2,958 ayes, 2 noes, and 3 abstentions. What does that speak to you about the so-called purge within the party, and what does it mean for India and the world at large?
Well, you see, the delegates to the NPC, which did the voting yesterday, are very carefully handpicked. That's number one. But that's always been the case earlier. But what came as a surprise to me was the amount of lobbying which was done before the vote. With each of the provincial delegations, not just by Xi Jinping alone, who did it with Guangdong provincial delegation and with Chongqing delegation, but all the 7 standing committee members who went out of the way to canvass support for a yes vote yesterday. So while you had handpicked people, but it was not a done deal. So there are a lot of effort which also went into it, to make sure that if there was dissent, that remained within single-digit numbers, and they accomplished that quite comfortably with only 2 people going against
and very quickly,
it.
Atul, are we looking at an era of strongmen all over the world, be it Trump in Washington, be it Xi Jinping in China?
Very differently, because Trump has its own compulsions, the way he has come. And that's something we can analyze sometimes later. But strongmen is a default position of just not of communist of China, of PRC's China, that is since 1949. But really, it is a part of the ruling classes in China in the imperial times as well. So that's something, along with the principle of meritocracy, which is a Confucian principle, which gets incorporated even when China becomes a socialist country. So that on China's case, I can see that this is a default position which has been adopted of being a strongman.
Right.
In other countries, well, I can say Shinzo Abe in Japan and frankly Narendra Modi in India. So there is this, as the stresses in the global system increase, there is this sort of an impulse to resolve very complex problems by having very strong people at the helm.
Right, on that note, Atul Aneja in Beijing, thank you so much for that comprehensive update on that story.